At this point, I want to take a look at a couple of the basics of working with inequalities. The first thing we need to take a look at is a function called the absolute value function, which sometimes shows up with inequalities. Absolute value is written using two vertical lines, not parentheses or brackets or anything like that. And absolute value can be defined, and there's several different ways to define it, but I want to look at it as absolute value of A being A itself if A is greater than or equal to 0, and absolute value of A is being the opposite of A if A is less than 0. Now what this implies is that the absolute value is going to act like grouping symbols, and anything that falls within those symbols is going to come out as a non-negative value. For example, absolute value of 5 is 5 because 5 is positive to begin with. But the absolute value of negative 5 is 5 because it went in as negative. Absolute value will remove that negative sign and give you a positive result. Now, absolute value, just like grouping symbols, only has an effect on that is within it. So if I had a negative sign on the outside and absolute value of 5 after that, then that would come out negative 5 because this negative sign will carry over because the absolute value can't get rid of it because it is outside. Now, absolute value is on your calculator. You have to go to the math menu. You go over one place to the number column, and absolute value is command number 1. So I can take the absolute value of negative 5. That's what it looks like on your calculator, and there's how it evaluates. If you want to take the opposite of the absolute value of 7, say, then you put the negative sign first, then go to the math menu, then go over to number, bring up absolute value. There's the 7. Close the parentheses, and again you see it came out negative because it was outside the absolute value, and the absolute value couldn't take away the negative because it wasn't inside. Alright, so there's absolute value. Now we need to look at the structure of our number line. Our real number line is basically centered at 0, and on the right hand side we have our positive numbers, positive 1, positive 2, positive 3, etc. On the left hand side we have our negatives, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. And when we use symbols like greater than and less than, those symbols are referring to this ordering on the number line. For example, if I say 5 is less than 7, that is true because 5 is to the left of 7 on the number line. So in other words, our symbol, which we call less than, can be thought of as meaning to the left of, because it is implying that 5 is to the left of 7 on the number line. If I say 9 is greater than negative 3, then that greater than symbol is implying that 9 is to the right of the negative 3 on the number line. So if you're questioning which way a symbol should face, should I use the less than or should I use the greater than symbol, just remember this layout of the number line. For example, if we're looking at a negative 2 and a 6, well, again, look at your number line. Here's 0, negative 1, negative 2. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Clearly the negative 2 is to the left of the 6, so that makes this a less than relationship. Now don't be confused when you start working with the negatives. If you want to look at a negative 7 versus a negative 11, again remember the layout of the number line. Now 0 would be up in here, and here we would have negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8, negative 9, negative 10, and then finally the negative 11. Clearly the negative 11 is to the left of the negative 7, or you could refer the negative 7 as being to the right of. So negative 7 is in fact greater than negative 11. Sort of the reverse of what you would expect, or what you do see over here on the right hand side of the number line. So the negative side is sort of a flip or a mirror image of the right hand side. Now remember the less than and greater than being to the left of and to the right of. Remember, always keep this number line in your mind. Keep that layout in your mind as you're looking to make the comparison to see which is lesser and which is greater. And always be careful with your fractions. With the fractions, if you are comparing like a negative 3/4 to a negative 5/6, your calculator can be helpful. So I would look at a negative 3/4 on the calculator, look at it in decimal node, so you could jot down that that is a negative 0.75. Now for the negative 5/6. Take a negative 5/6. Calculator gives you that it's a negative 0.8, then repeating 3. So we can jot that down. And thinking about the orientation of how this would fall on the number line, we see that this is actually a greater than relationship. So let your calculator be of help when you work with the fractions and when you work with the decimals. And again, always remember the orientation of the number line when you're trying to decide whether two values obey a less than or a greater than relationship.